Hi, I'm Charlene Lamb, and I am a certified grief coach. I help people to navigate the practical and emotional aftermath of losing a loved one. Have you ever noticed how often we use the language of disaster when we talk about losing a loved one and the aftermath of losing that loved one? I often describe being blindsided by my mother's death. She died from a stroke. It was totally out of the blue, and I felt like I had been going along in my own life, had my plans, and then boom, everything changed in a moment. Other people have expressed to me that they felt derailed, knocked off track. Again, feeling like their life was going somewhere, they had plans, and then disaster. People talk about feeling devastated, feeling like things are in ruins. And this makes so much sense because when we lose a loved one, when we lose someone who was important to us, something massive has happened. Something big has happened. I want to look at this analogy of a car accident. The way that I think of losing my mother, being blindsided. We're going to use this as a thought exercise. If a car accident analogy is a little bit too much for you, if you've been in one, for instance, feel free to insert the analogy of being in a natural disaster, like a tornado, for instance. When my mother died, it felt out of the blue. I felt blindsided by the news. And in the next really 2 years, I felt like I was in shock. And I was just stumbling around, trying to pick up the pieces of my life, of her life, all this detritus, all these parts, these broken parts that were still on the road. And frankly, I was in a state of shock. Hadn't really processed what really happened, but I was just trying to pick up the pieces, figure out what needed to be done next. And in the case of my mom, I was dealing with her estate and the paperwork and all her belongings and figuring out what I needed to do. I put on my responsible hat and took to ticking off the things on my list. The thing about the analogy of being in a car accident is that I think it's easier to imagine what the potential effect of having had that happen to us would look like. For example, if I was in a bad car accident, I wouldn't be surprised if I had physical symptoms. Maybe I break a leg, maybe I break a foot. Or if I'm lucky, then maybe there isn't a broken bone, but maybe I have whiplash. Maybe my back never feels the same. So I can imagine that there might be an effect and a residual effect that lasts not just in the immediate aftermath of the disaster, but even months and years afterwards. Using that analogy of a car accident, that example, can we imagine what might be some of the emotional effects? I spoke about feeling like I was in shock at first, couldn't really process what had just happened. And then maybe down the line, the adrenaline starts to wear off, and maybe it starts to sink in what happened. Maybe there are emotional effects like maybe I might be afraid to drive again. If it happened on the highway, maybe I would be afraid to drive on the highway. And those would all seem like very normal responses to going through that experience of being blindsided in a car accident. The reason why I find this thought exercise helpful is often people can see so clearly the ongoing effects of something happening to them. And yet, when we lose someone, there's sometimes the assumption on an individual level, and certainly on a societal level and government policy level that we are just supposed to somehow be able to keep going. That this massive thing happens to us, and yet we're supposed to be able to continue on the track that we were on, continue on the path that we were on, doing all the things that we were doing. And that doesn't really make sense. I mentioned paperwork, right? With my mother's paperwork. And even then with a car accident, we can imagine, oh yes, well, of course, I would have to deal with the insurance paperwork. Maybe I would have to figure out another source of transportation to get to work and to take my kids to their classes. Maybe I would have to figure out how to buy a new car. And that, again, just seems like, well, that's part of the process, and we understand that that will take time, that will take attention, that will take resources and energy. It's the same after a big loss. There are often tasks that show up on our list, whether we are the official person in charge of that or not. Another aspect of this is imagining how you would accommodate any injuries that you had. Imagine that I was in a car accident. I broke my foot. In what ways would I choose to accommodate, that is, to make space for this new circumstance in my life? If I have a broken foot, I'm going to assume that I will not be able to do all the things that I usually do. I'm going to naturally assume that I will have to cancel some events. I will have to reschedule some meetings. I will have to tell clients that we need to move their calls to another time. I will assume that maybe I have to really rest more, right? Because my body is going to be recovering. And also, I might need to go get professional help to go get that foot taken a look at. I might need to go to physical therapy. I would make all these accommodations without guilt. I would not feel guilty about calling an Uber instead of walking up the hill with the groceries. I would not expect myself to be able to carry as many groceries as I normally do. I would be more comfortable asking for help from my husband, from my friends, from my network, from my colleagues, and also asking for grace from my clients and vendors and partners. Notice how it seems natural to make these accommodations for ourselves when we have a physical injury like a broken foot. Consider that, if you were in a car accident and broke your foot, other people are also more likely to follow up with you because it's a visible injury. That you might have colleagues checking in on you a month later, 3 months later, your boss asking how you're doing, because they know that either you have this physical injury that you're still dealing with, or that they know, well, yes, of course you might still be feeling the impact, sorry, no pun intended, the effects of a major car accident. But with death, with bereavement, with loss, unfortunately, we often live in a society where people are not comfortable going there. Either they know that they're not comfortable, so they don't know what to say, they don't know how to bring it up, or on a societal level, we tend to kind of brush it aside, assume that you were somehow able to take care of all the things you needed to do in your 3 days of bereavement leave, or in the 2 weeks following the big event. I want to share that analogy with you. Share that thought exercise. Have a think about how you would take care of yourself, how you would accommodate yourself, what expectations you might adjust if you were in that kind of disaster. And then see how you want to extend that grace, that understanding, that compassion for yourself after the loss of a loved one. Take care.